The chamber of the Galactic Concorde was not designed for comfort. It was designed for awe. Its vast dome shimmered with a false starfield, and the air carried the subtle metallic scent of recycled atmosphere and a dozen different species. At the central podium, human diplomat Mina stood, feeling very small. Her datapad felt heavy in her hands. On it were schematics, yield reports, and ecological models from the agricultural world of New Tegu. The Kelios Directorate had just finished their presentation. Their representative, a tall avian being with iridescent feathers named Envoy Clar, had spoken with clipped, precise tones. His words still hung in the air. Unacceptable disruption of local biospheres. Their farming techniques introduce aggressive, non-native soil profiles. They consume resources with a rapaciousness that destabilizes sectors. We must consider stricter sanctions, including the seizure of assets, to compel compliance. The word compliance tasted like ash. Mina took a steadying breath. Behind her, at the small human delegation's bench, her aide Jiho gave an almost imperceptible nod. His fingers were steepled, recording everything. Esteemed members of the Concorde. Mina began, her voice amplified by the collar around her neck. It sounded frail against the chamber's acoustics. The Human Protectorate disputes these claims in the strongest terms. The world in question, New Tegu, was a Class 4 barren rock when we settled it. Our environmental integration protocols are not destructive. They are symbiotic. A low chitter, a sign of Vantari amusement, came from the predatory blocks section. The Vantari Compact's ambassador, a sleek being with dark, fibrous skin, leaned forward, its multifaceted eyes glinting. Symbiotic.
Envoy Clar's beak clicked.
Your definition of symbiosis is curious. Our probes show biomass signatures that deviate from all known galactic patterns. You do not cultivate food. You cultivate complexity. Mina called up an image. It showed a field on New Tegu, not of simple grain, but of a layered, multicolored canopy of plants, some flowering, some bearing unfamiliar fruit, others with leaves that seem to shift color in the light. We call it a polyculture network. It is self-sustaining. It produces oxygen at thrice the standard rate, fixes its own nitrogen, and requires no external pesticides. The soil is richer now than when we arrived. The data is all here. She sent the packet. Across the dome, lights flickered as delegates received it. Few would open it. The decision, she felt with a sinking heart, was not about data. A geloid delegate, a gelatinous mass in a containment sphere, pulsed with light. The issue is not one of mere botany, diplomat Mina. It is one of precedent. The human method is opaque. It does not conform.
Non-conformity breeds instability.
The Nixian Nebula is a sensitive region. Your vessels there operate with unusual autonomy. Mina's knuckles were white on the podium. The Mimir and its sister ships are xenobotanical survey vessels. Their mission is peaceful study. Their autonomy is required due to communication lags in the nebula's dust clouds. They are no threat. Then they will not object to a routine inspection and temporary impoundment. The Vantari ambassador hissed, its voice like dry leaves rustling. A gesture of goodwill. To prove this transparency you speak of. This was the trap. They had been circling it for months. Mina looked toward the Concorde Arbiter, a serene, ancient being from a neutral species. The Arbiter's large, liquid eyes showed no emotion. The proposal for sanctions and inspection has been tabled, the Arbiter intoned. We shall vote. The voting lights began to bloom across the chamber. Cool blue for approval, red for denial. Sector by sector, the blue lights ignited. The Kelios block, the Vantari block, their client species, even some of the neutral observers, wary of the brewing conflict, voted blue. Jiho's face was a stoic mask, but his eyes were fixed on the tally, memorizing every name, every betrayal. The final count flashed. The sanctions passed. The order to seize human vessels in the Nixian Nebula was now galactic law. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Mina felt the weight of it crush the air from her lungs. Envoy Clar inclined his head, a gesture of cold victory. Compliance will ensure a swift resolution. Diplomat. Your people are clearly gifted growers. Perhaps you can tend your gardens more quietly. Mina gathered her datapad. Her movements were slow, deliberate, the only way to keep the tremor from her hands. She walked back to the bench. Jiho stood, collecting their things. They didn't even look at the data, he murmured, his voice low and tight. They saw what they wanted to see, Mina replied, her voice barely a whisper. A minor species with strange habits, getting above its station. They see a garden and call it a weapon because they cannot understand the gardener. As they left the majestic, hostile chamber, Mina's thoughts flew across the light years to the Nixian Nebula, to the old ship Mimir and its captain, June. She had bought them time with words, and she had failed. Now, the only thing left was the plan. And the plan required the galaxy to make the one mistake it was determined to make. The bridge of the CVV Mimir was quiet. Captain June sat in his command chair, watching the static-filled swirl of the Nixian Nebula on the main viewer. The colors were beautiful. A wash of purple and deep blue, streaked with the cold light of distant stars. It was a peaceful view. The message from Earth Central Command had not been peaceful.it played on a loop on his private screen. The face of the commander was grim, the background the muted gray of a bunker. The Concord vote has passed. The sanction is now law. All vessels in the Nixian sector are to be impounded for inspection. You are ordered to comply. Power down primary systems upon detection of Concord forces. Do not resist. Repeat, do not resist. Good luck, Captain. June had watched it 10 times, looking for a hidden meaning, a coded phrase. There was none. The order was clear. It was also a death sentence for his mission. He turned the screen off. His first officer, Yuna, approached. She was their chief botanist, a woman with calm eyes and hands that were always slightly stained with soil or plant sap. The crew is ready, Captain. The secure protocols are initiated. All primary data cores have been purged and flash sanitized. And the gardens? June asked, his voice low. Yuna's expression tightened. A flicker of pain. Sealed. Life support to the biodomes is offline. The tertiary ecosystems are in hibernation. It's quiet down there. Quiet. June knew what that cost her. The biodomes were her life's work. A living library of Earth's lost biology and something far greater. Now they were just dark, silent chambers. The sensor chime broke the stillness. Tay, their engineer, looked up from his station. His usually cheerful face was drawn. 3 signatures, Captain. Vantari configuration. Frigate class. They're on an intercept course, weapons hot. Of course they are, June said softly. He stood up. All hands, this is the captain. Stand by for boarding. Remember your training. No resistance. Answer direct questions only. Protect the mission. He took one last look at the nebula. Tay, power down everything except for basic life support and external comms. Make us look as harmless as possible. The lights on the bridge dimmed. The gentle hum of the engines faded into a profound silence. The Mimir became a dark, cold rock drifting in the colorful clouds. The Vantari ships approached with predatory grace. They were all sharp angles and black armor. A tractor beam locked on, pulling the Mimir with a lurch. Then came the heavy, jarring thuds of magnetic clamps. The sound of metal scraping against metal echoed through the empty halls. The main airlock hissed. A surge of different air, thick with the smell of Vantari, ozone and burnt spices, flooded in. Heavy footsteps followed. Commander Kvor entered first. He was tall, his fibrous skin like polished charcoal, his 4 eyes scanning the dim corridor with contempt. A squad of Marines, armed with pulse rifles, fanned out behind him. June waited for them, hands visible at his sides. Yuna and Tay stood slightly behind him. Captain June of the survey vessel Mimir, June said, keeping his tone flat. We are compliant. Welcome aboard. Kvor stopped before him, looking down. Survey vessel. Your registration says that. We will see. His voice was a dry rasp. Where is your drive core? Your weapons array? We have no weapons, June said. Our drive is a standard class 2 geloid manifold, rated for slow travel. It is one deck below. My engineer, Tay, can show you. Kvor's head tilted. I will see everything. Start with your cargo. They were marched through the ship. The Vantari Marines kicked at storage lockers, scanned empty rooms, and grew more frustrated by the minute. They found botanical samples, soil analyzers, weather simulation equipment. They found crew quarters with personal items, photos of Earth, books, a worn stuffed toy on a bed. Finally, they reached the great sealed doors of the primary biodome. Open this, Kvor ordered. Yuna input a code. The massive doors parted with a sigh of equalizing air. The Marines raised their rifles, expecting a threat. They were met with darkness and a wave of cold, damp air.
Kvor's Marines activated helmet lights.
The beams cut through the black, illuminating strange, dormant shapes. Giant trees with smooth bark, vines hanging still, beds of moss and fern. It was a forest frozen in time.
No flowers bloomed.
No fruit hung from the branches. It was a collection of skeletons. What is this? Kvor snapped, turning to Yuna. The primary research subject, Yuna said, her voice hollow. Xenobotanical adaptation studies. These plants are in a state of induced hibernation for the transit. Kvor strode into the dome, his boots crunching on a layer of fallen, dry leaves. He reached out and snapped a twig from a sleeping tree. It broke with a dry snap. He threw it aside in disgust. A garden. A dead garden. He turned back to June, all four eyes blazing with irritation. Where are your real holdings? Your forbidden tech? Your weapons? This is all we have, June said, spreading his hands. We are scientists. For a long moment, Kvor stared at him, searching for a lie. He found only weary resignation. The Vantari commander's comm unit crackled. A report from his teams scouring the engine room. Nothing. The Mimir was, by all scans, exactly what it claimed to be. An old, slow, harmless science ship. Kvor's mandibles clicked in clear disappointment. He gestured to his Marines. Secure the crew in the mess hall. I am reporting to the Directorate. This ship is a waste of time. As he passed June, he leaned in close. Your people are a mystery wrapped in nothing. A dead garden in the dark. Pathetic. The Marines herded the human crew away. As June walked, he glanced back at the open biodome doors, a cave of shadows. Not a dead garden, he thought. A sleeping one. And the galaxy had just chosen to be its nightmare. The first part of the plan was complete. The vessel had been unveiled and found wanting. The next move was theirs. The mess hall of the Mimir had become a prison. The crew of 20 sat at the long tables, watched by two silent Vantari Marines at the door. The mood was not one of panic, but of a grim, quiet waiting. Captain June sat with Yuna and Tay. They spoke in low voices, their words almost lost in the hum of the ship's minimal life support. They scanned everything, Tay whispered, his fingers tracing a scratch on the table. The drive, the power relays, the hull integrity. They found the outer shell of the biodomes, but not the inner matrix. Their scanners read it as dense, non-reactive organic matter. Like a seed, Yuna said, her eyes distant. A seed's shell tells you nothing about the tree inside.
Yun nodded slowly.
On the small view screen mounted in the corner, a Concord news feed played silently. It showed the proud faces of the Kelios and Vantari delegates. A headline scrolled past, Galactic Law Upheld, Hazardous Vessel Secured. The image changed to a distant, magnified shot of the Mimir, looking small and dark against the Vantari frigate. The story is already written, June said, his voice flat. They need a finale. As if on cue, the doors hissed open. Commander Kvor entered, followed by a technician holding a comms pad. Kvor's posture was different now. It was no longer frustrated, but officious, filled with a sense of ceremony.
Captain Yun, Kvor raspel.
The Galactic Concord has reviewed the findings of our inspection. The vessel CVV Mimir is hereby declared a biological hazard and a smuggling scow operating under false registration. Its continued existence is a threat to orderly space.
Yun stood up.
The entire crew went still. There has been a mistake. We are a science vessel. You have seen our work. Your work is a lie and a danger, Kvor stated, reading from the pad the technician held. The decision is final. For the safety of the nebula and in accordance with Directive 7, this vessel is to be scuttled immediately. Your crew will be transferred to a holding facility pending further inquiry. A cold silence filled the room. This was it. The point of no return. Yuna closed her eyes for a second. Tay looked down at his hands. June simply stared at Kvor, his face an unreadable mask. You are making an error that cannot be undone, June said, each word deliberate. That is a matter of perspective, Kvor replied, a hint of smugness in his dry voice. Prepare your people for evacuation. You have 10 minutes. He turned and left, the Marines following. The moment the doors sealed, a different energy moved through the crew. It was not fear. It was focus. They moved without speaking, gathering the few personal items they were allowed. Their movements were precise, practiced in a distant cell on a Concorde station. Mina watched a live feed on a public terminal. Her heart was a drum in her chest. Jiho stood beside her, his jaw clenched. The feed showed the 3 Vantari frigates positioning themselves around the tiny, dark shape of the Mimir. A commentator's voice droned about upholding galactic standards. Don't do it, Mina whispered to the screen, a futile plea. Please just take the ship. Don't be this foolish. But the galaxy had chosen its role. On the feed, the forward weapons ports of the lead Vantari frigate glowed a bright, terrible blue. Back on the Mimir, the crew was lined up at the airlock, entering the small, boxy shuttle that would take them to the Vantari ship. June was the last to board. He paused at the threshold, looking back down the empty corridor that led to the biodomes. He gave a slow, final nod. Then he stepped inside. The shuttle detached and drifted toward the waiting frigate. From its small viewport, June watched his ship. The Vantari frigate fired a beam of concentrated plasma, designed to pierce battle armor, struck the Mimir amidships. The old science vessel didn't explode dramatically. It came apart in a silent, heartbreaking unraveling of metal and composite. A first bloom of fire was instantly smothered by the vacuum. Then a second shot hit the power core, and a larger, brighter flash erupted, casting stark shadows on the nebulous clouds. Mina turned her head away from the terminal, a tear of rage and sorrow tracing down her cheek. Jiho put a steadying hand on her shoulder, his own eyes hard on the Vantari frigate's bridge. Commander Kvor watched the destruction with satisfaction. Target eliminated. Scan for debris. A technician monitored his console. Significant particulate matter, Commander. Mostly inert. Hull fragments. And a large concentration of organic dust from the destroyed botanical sections. The explosion has propelled it outward on the energy shockwave. Biological readings? Kvor asked, a slight edge of caution in his voice. The technician ran the scan. None. No life signs. No passagents. It is just dust. Plant matter pulverized. It's already mixing with the nebula's gas clouds and solar winds. It will disperse harmlessly. Kvor nodded, his duty done. A fitting end for a ship of lies. Inform the Directorate the hazard is cleansed. What the scanners did not see, could not see, was the true nature of that dust. Each microscopic particle was a perfect, resilient capsule. A shell of neutral carbon protected a core of sophisticated bionanite code and genetic material. They were not dead. They were dormant, designed to be spread by catastrophe. The energy of the plasma blasts and the heat of the core breach had not destroyed them. It had energized them, primed them, and scattered them like seeds from a forest fire as the Vantari frigates turned and powered up their drives. They passed through the expanding, invisible cloud. The particulate, finer than smoke, was pulled into intake vents, settling on hull plating, filtering through external sensor arrays. Inside the frigate's life support system, a filter detected the fine dust and categorized it. Non-viable. Inert. No action required. The Mimir was gone. Its mission was now complete. In the silence of space, the garden had been planted not in soil, but in the future itself. The galaxy, pleased with its decisive action, sailed unknowingly into a storm of its own making, carrying the very seeds of its transformation within its own walls. The holding facility was a series of caves carved into a gray, airless asteroid. Gravity was artificial and felt wrong, a constant low pull that made the head ache. The humans were kept in a large common area with transparent walls. They could see the Ventari guards in the corridor outside, their dark forms moving like shadows, days blurred together. Food was a bland nutrient paste. The guards did not speak to them. The only news came from a screen on the far wall, always tuned to the official Concord channel. It showed reports of stability and order, of the successful enforcement of law in the Nixian Nebula. Captain June sat with his back against the cold wall, watching the screen but not seeing it. His mind was on the dispersal vectors, the density of the nebula's gases, the likely paths of the Vantari fleet. He was running calculations without a datapad. Una sat next to him, her eyes closed. She was not sleeping. She was remembering the specific weight of a soil sample from Dome 3. The morning she saw the first crystal tendril form on a modified oak sapling. The silent, beautiful intelligence of the ecosystem they had carried. It was all gone now, set free in the most violent way possible. "How long?" she asked quietly, without opening her eyes. June knew what she meant. For the spores to reach a viable atmosphere, it depends on the solar winds. Some will drift for years. Others, he glanced toward the screen. Others hitched a ride. Tay was pacing, a habit that annoyed the guards. He stopped by the transparent wall, staring out at the Vantari on duty. "Their ship," he muttered. "It passed right through the cloud. Their environmental systems would have sucked it in, filtered it. They'd be breathing it by now. It's inert until it finds the right conditions," Una said softly. "Light, water, complex chemistry, a living biosphere to converse with." "A friendly chat," Tay said, a humorless smile on his face. "Hello, we're from Earth. Let's redecorate." On the screen, the news report changed. A minor story from the Kelios fringe world of Kale 7. Reports of unprecedented plant growth in the equatorial agricultural zones. Vines with surprising strength were found integrating with support structures. It was presented as a curiosity, a result of unexpectedly fertile seasonal rains. The report lasted 20 seconds before moving to sports results. June and Una shared a look. It was starting. A week later, the story was harder to ignore. A Vantari mining outpost on a rocky moon. Their primary water extraction facility, which pulled trace moisture from the deep rock, had become clogged. Not with mineral deposits, but with a fast-growing, fibrous root system that seemed to have formed from nothing. Operations were halted. The word infestation was used. The guards outside the cell became more tense. They spoke in low, sharp clicks to each other. They looked at the humans differently, not with contempt anymore, but with a slow-burning suspicion. Then, the main report. It dominated the news cycle for a full day. The Kelios homeworld itself, or at least its great western crystal forest. The towering, beautiful silica trees that were the heart of their culture and technology were changing. A fast-growing, photosynthesizing moss was appearing at their bases. It was not eating the crystal. It was integrating with it, weaving green and gray together, forming strange hybrid structures. The crystals, where touched, began to change color, to become cloudy. The Kelios scientists were baffled. It was not a disease. It was a transformation. The moss tested as a completely new, hyperadaptive genus. Panic was still being controlled, but it was there, in the eyes of the Kelios news anchor, in the urgent tone of the Vantari commentators speaking of biocontamination. One of the human crew, a young geologist named Hannah, was watching the report closely. She pointed at the screen. "Look at the pattern of growth. It's not random. It's following energy lines, geothermal vents, water tables. It's building a network." The news shifted to show a geloid colony ship reporting a similar issue. A decorative plant wall aboard the vessel had suddenly, explosively grown, its tendrils snaking into bulkheads and console interfaces. It was everywhere. Anywhere the ships that had been at the Mimir's destruction had gone. Anywhere the solar winds from the nebula had reached a habitable world. The Vantari Guard commander, the one who had overseen their transfer, came to their cell. His 4 eyes studied June through the transparent wall. His earlier smugness was gone, replaced by a cold, simmering anger. "What did you do?" he hissed, his voice barely audible through the comm speaker. June stood up and walked calmly to the wall. He met the Vantari's gaze. "We did nothing. You destroyed our vessel. You scattered its contents. We warned you it was a mistake. This plague, this green noise, it is your weapon." "No," June said, and there was a touch of pity in his voice that seemed to enrage the guard more than any insult. "A weapon destroys. This does not destroy. Converts. It learns. It grows. It makes things suitable for us. You tried to burn our garden. Now it grows from the ashes of your ships." The guard stared, his fibrous skin twitching. He had no reply. He turned and walked stiffly away, the fear finally visible in the set of his shoulders. Yuna came to stand beside June. She watched the news, which now showed a coordinated fleet movement. Concord ships heading to quarantine-affected zones. "They'll try to burn it out," she said. "They can try," June replied, his hands behind his back. "But fire only spreads the seeds farther. The protocol is awake now. It has tasted alien sunlight and drunk alien water. It is talking to their ecosystems, and it is rewriting the conversation." He looked at his crew, all watching him. "The garden is planted. Now it grows, and there is no stopping spring." The chaos on the Kelios homeworld could not be hidden. The official Concord news feed now showed carefully selected images, but the truth was in the frantic reports bleeding through from independent sources. The great crystal forests were singing a new, terrible song. Where the green moss touched the silica trees, the crystal did not shatter. Transformed, it became something else. A lattice of crystalline wood that pulsed with a soft, internal light. It was breathtakingly beautiful and utterly alien to the Kelios. The Kelios themselves were in a panic. Their cities, built within and around the forests, were becoming impassable. Vines with leaves like polished jade snaked up their spires, not damaging the structures, but merging with them, softening hard edges with organic curves. The air, once thin and crisp, was becoming thicker, richer with oxygen that burned Kelios' lungs not adapted for it. Their world was being made perfect for a different kind of life. On the asteroid, the human crew watched the reports in silence. They saw the fear they had expected, but they also saw something they had not, a dawning, galactic-scale horror of understanding. The Vantari Guard who had taunted them did not return. New guards arrived, nervous, younger ones who refused to make eye contact. The food deliveries became irregular. Then, one day, the cell door hissed open. Not for a meal tray, but for a full squad of Concord peacekeepers, a mix of species. Their weapons were drawn, but not exactly pointed at the humans. It was a posture of extreme caution.
Captain Junior Diplomat Mina.
"You will come with us?" The lead peacekeeper, a stern geloid, intoned. "The Concord Council demands your presence."
June stood slowly.
Mina, who had been kept separate until now, was brought from another cell. Her eyes met June's, and in that look was an entire conversation. The time for hiding was over. They were escorted not with brutality, but with a stiff, fearful formality. They were taken to a transit shuttle and then onto a large Concord cruiser. The journey was short. Soon they were marched into a stark, circular chamber. This was not the Grand Concord Hall. This was a crisis room. Holoscreens flickered with images of green chaos on a dozen worlds. The air smelled of stress and desperation. The room was filled with the leaders of the major species. Envoy Klar of the Kelios was there, but his iridescent feathers were dull and ruffled. The Vantari ambassador looked diminished, its fibrous skin tight across its frame. They all stared at the two humans as if seeing ghosts. The Concord arbiter, the same being who had overseen the sanction vote, gestured for June and Mina to stand in the center of the room. Its large, liquid eyes held a deep, unsettling pain. The phenomenon is accelerating, the Arbiter said, its voice devoid of its former serenity. Worlds touched by the particulate matter from your destroyed vessel are undergoing rapid, irreversible ecological transformation. Native flora is being subsumed. Atmospheric compositions are shifting. It is not a weapon of blast and fire. Explain it. June looked around the room. He saw no sympathy, only a terror begging for an answer it could fight. You asked for an explanation before. You did not listen. You saw a garden and called it a hazard. Enough! The Vantari ambassador screeched. What is this poison? How do we stop it? It is not poison, Mina said, her voice clear and calm in the tense room. And you cannot stop it. You activated it. She stepped forward, and a holographic image, provided by the Concord's own scientists, appeared in the air. It showed a magnified view of the dust from the Mimir. It looked like a simple spore. Then the image zoomed in, and in again, revealing impossible layers of complexity. Nanoscale machines woven into genetic code, a blueprint folded inside a shell. Long ago, on Earth, we mastered our own biology, Mina said. We could shape life like clay. We could make any world a paradise for ourselves. We almost did. And in doing so, we almost destroyed ourselves in a war not of weapons, but of competing runaway ecosystems. We called it the Great Silence. After that, we swore never to use that knowledge again. Not as a sword.
Jun took over.
But we kept it. As a shield. The Mimir was not a survey ship. It was an Arkansas. One of several. Its biodomes contained the master templates, the protomatter for our ultimate defense. A terraforming protocol so advanced it is gentle. It does not burn or blast. It learns, it adapts, it integrates. It turns any environment into a balanced, human-compatible biosphere. The room was deathly silent. The Kelian envoy Klar found his voice. A broken whisper. A shield. The law was simple, June said, looking directly at him. The arcs were to be left alone. They were libraries, seed banks, and locks. If you destroyed an arc, you broke the lock. The protocol activates. It is automatic. It is unstoppable. You asked what you destroyed. You didn't destroy a weapon. You destroyed the only thing keeping that power in check. The truth landed in the room with the weight of a dead star. The Concord leaders stared, not at the humans, but at the holoscreens showing their worlds turning green and strange. They had sought to break a tool of war and had instead unleashed a quiet, biological reformatting of their very homes. The Vantari ambassador sank into its seat, a gesture of utter defeat. You made your last defense a garden? A garden that grows from the ashes of aggression, Mina replied softly. You tried to burn ours. Now it grows for us, and only us, in the soil of your arrogance. Your decisions did not conquer us. They made your worlds ours without a single shot fired. You are not being invaded. You are being made obsolete. The Arbiter closed its large eyes. The terrible, final understanding was now complete. They had not been fighting an enemy. They had been pruning a rosebush, and now the entire galaxy was flowering with thorns they could not comprehend. The title of their own report on the Mimir's destruction flashed in every mind. Hazard cleansed. They realized far too late that the hazard had never been the vessel. The hazard had been their own decision to break it. The silence in the crisis room was thick enough to feel. It was the silence of a verdict being read, and there was no appeal. The holograms still flickered, showing the green transformation of worlds, but the leaders no longer saw a problem to be solved. They saw a fate to be endured. Envoy Clarus' feathers lay flat against his body, a sign of profound despair. His voice, when it came, was hollow. You speak of this protocol as if it is a living thing. Can it not be reasoned with? Bargained with? June looked at the Kelian with an expression that held no malice, only a terrible, simple truth. You do not bargain with rain for falling, or with a tree for growing roots. It is a process. It was designed with one purpose, to ensure human survival by making a place for us. It reads the chemistry of a world, the light of its sun, and it begins to build a home from what is there. It is doing its job. The Vantari ambassador stood abruptly, its fibrous skin trembling with a rage that had nowhere to go. Then we will burn it. We will scorch every infected world from orbit. We will purge this weed. Mina turned her calm gaze upon it. And in the burning you will create more ash, more wind. You will scatter the essence even farther. Each particle is a perfect, resilient seed. Your fires will only be a new kind of wind, planting it on the next world, and the next. She paused, letting the futility sink in. You cannot kill an idea, and this is the oldest idea of all. Life finds a way. We simply gave it a very specific direction. A jelloid scientist, its form shimmering with anxious colors, spoke from a console. Our analysis confirms the irreversible nature. The transformation is at a quantum biological level. It is rewriting planetary code. To stop, it would require sterilizing the biosphere entirely, leaving nothing but rock. Which is what you thought our world was, before we arrived, June said quietly. The Arbiter finally opened its eyes. The pain in them was ancient. So there is no solution. You have one. You will inherit the galaxy without a war. June shook his head slowly. This was never about winning an inheritance. It was about preventing our extinction. You forced our hand. The protocol is not a conqueror. It is a gardener. And now the galaxy requires gardeners. He stepped forward, addressing the broken council. Your technology is failing where the green grows, isn't it? Metals are becoming brittle as new organic matrices fuse with them. Energy grids are being integrated into photosynthetic networks. Your ships that pass through the cloud are slowly becoming a fertile. Nods of grim confirmation. It was all true. We did not want this, Mina said, her voice filled with a sorrow that surprised the aliens. We wanted solitude. We wanted to tend our own gardens. You demanded conformity. You saw difference as a threat and tried to prune it. Now, the difference is in the air you breathe and the soil under your feet. The only ones who can navigate the new world you have made are the ones who understand its language. The truth of their new reality settled upon the leaders. It was not slavery. It was not imprisonment. It was something far more profound and terrifying. Obsolescence. Their civilizations, their cities, their very ways of life were becoming incompatible with their own planets. The universe was moving on, and it was speaking a human tongue. What happens to us? Clar asked, the pride gone. Only the fear of a father for his people remaining. June's posture softened. Just a fraction. That is the only question that matters now. The protocol does not target animal life. It transforms the stage, not the actors. But your actors cannot live on this new stage. You will need help. You will need guides. He looked at Mina, then back at the council. Release our people. All of them. Give us access to the affected worlds. We cannot stop the change, but we can perhaps shepherd it. We can teach you how to live within it. We can design preserves where your native biomes can be protected, where your people can live. It will not be what you had, but it can be a life. The offer was not victory. It was a ceasefire offered from the side that held all the cards. It was mercy, but a mercy that tasted of ash and humility. The Vantari ambassador let out a low, shuddering sound. It understood. They could fight and ensure their own total annihilation in a fruitless war. Or they could surrender and become refugees in a galaxy that was no longer theirs, dependent on the kindness of the beings they had tried to break. The Arbiter looked from one shattered leader to another. No vote was called. No procedure was needed. The silence was agreement. The human detainees will be released and granted the authority they request, the Arbiter said, the words tasting bitter. The Concord requests your assistance. As June and Mina were led from the room, not as prisoners but as reluctant saviors, the finality of it all hung in the air. The guards outside the door, a mix of species, looked at them not with hatred, but with a bewildered awe. They were the first inhabitants of the new age. Walking back to the transport, June spoke softly to Mina. It is done. No. she corrected, looking at the stars beyond the viewport. It is just beginning. We have to build a new kind of galaxy from the pieces of the one they destroyed. He nodded. The weight was immense. They had not fired a shot, but they had won the war by losing their ship. The galaxy had sought to teach humanity a lesson about power. And humanity's reply, quiet and green and inevitable, had been a lesson they would never forget. That the most profound power is not to destroy, but to create, and to do so on the ruins of your enemy's pride. The air on the Kelian homeworld was different. It was thick, sweet with the scent of blooming things that had no name. Hannah, now a young ecologist, walked slowly through what had once been the sacred Crystal Valley. Her boots sank slightly into a soft carpet of moss. Around her, the world was a symphony of green and silver. The great silica trees were still there, but they were not the same. The human protocol had woven life into their mineral forms. Crystal and wood grew together in spiraling patterns, creating structures that shimmered in the filtered light. It was not dead. It was more alive than ever, but in a way the Kelios could no longer understand that a group of Kelios watched her from a distance, their forms small under a protective canopy. This area was a preserve, one of many being established across the transformed worlds. Here, powerful sonic emitters and careful chemical treatments kept the new ecology at bay, a tiny bubble of the old world maintained by human technology. It was an island in a rising green sea. Hannah reached out and placed her hand on a hybrid trunk. It was warm, humming with a low, vital energy. Her data slate showed the readings, oxygen production, soil chemistry, water purification rates. The numbers were perfect. By every measure, this was a healthy, vibrant, and miraculously balanced world. It just wasn't their world. A soft chime came from her slate. It was a message from her mother, Una, on another world. "How is the new growth?" the text read. Hannah typed back, "Strong. The tertiary integration is complete. The valley is stable." She paused, then added, "They watch me all day from the preserve. They look lost." The reply came quickly. "They are. Be kind. We are gardeners in a garden we did not mean to plant." Hannah put the slate away. She looked up at the canopy where strange, luminous fruits hung. The galaxy had tried to prune humanity, to force it into a shape that fit. In response, humanity had simply changed the shape of the garden. There was no malice in it. That was what the aliens struggled to understand. The Mimir's legacy was not hatred. It was an immutable fact of life, like gravity. Her work done, she walked back to the edge of the preserve. A Kelian elder, his feathers the gray of old stone, stood at the barrier. He did not look at her with anger anymore. There was only a deep, weary sadness. "The reports say the conversion is complete for our continent," the elder said, his voice translated by a small device on his robe. "It is," Hannah said. "The new ecosystem is self-sustaining. It will maintain this balance indefinitely." "A balance that excludes us," he said. It was not an accusation, just a statement. Hannah nodded. She had no comforting lie. "The preserve will be expanded, as promised. Your people will have a home here. We will help you maintain it. A cage of our own past," the elder murmured, looking at the vibrant, teeming world beyond the invisible field. "While you walk free in our future." He turned his old eyes to her. "Did you plan for this? To make us visitors in our own home?" "No," Hannah said, and she meant it. "We planned to be left alone. Everything that happened after that was just a consequence. A natural consequence." The word natural seemed to strike the elder deeply. He was silent for a long time, watching a bird with jade-colored feathers. A new species born in the last year. A light on a crystalwood branch. It was beautiful. "We thought your ship was a threat," he finally said. "We thought we were being strong, decisive." He let out a soft, rasping sigh, the sound of profound regret. "We were only being loud, and our noise, it destroyed the silence we took for granted. It destroyed us." He bowed his head, a gesture of defeat and acceptance, and walked slowly back into the preserve, into the shrinking echo of what had been. Hannah watched him go. She felt no triumph. She felt the immense weight of the truth. The Vantari, the Kelios, the others, they had not been evil. They had been arrogant. They had believed the universe answered to force and policy. Humanity had simply introduced them to a different, older power. The patient, unstoppable power of life itself. She took a shuttle up to orbit. From the viewing port, the planet was a marble of stunning blue and lush green, more alive than any scan from a generation ago could have dreamed. It was a paradise, a human paradise. On her console, a galactic map glowed. Dozens of stars were marked with a soft green light, worlds touched by the Mimir's final breath. Each one was changing. Each one was becoming a new Eden, quiet and relentless. The human fleet, small and humble, was now busy traveling between these worlds, not as conquerors but as custodians, not as rulers but as guides. They were helping to build the preserves, to teach the principles of the new ecology, to manage a transition that had no end. June and Yuno were on a Vantari world, overseeing the planting of a great forest that would stabilize a continent. Mina and Ji-Ho were on a Concord station, negotiating the new, quiet treaties. They had all become gardeners. Hannah looked at the beautiful, green world below and the stars beyond. The galaxy had realized its error too late. It had tried to break a vessel, and in doing so, it had unleashed the very essence of the thing it feared. Not a human war fleet, but a human ideal, the dream of a living, growing home. That dream was now spreading root and branch across the stars, and there was no force in the universe that could ever prune it back. The decisions of the past had destroyed one galaxy. From its soil, a new one was quietly, peacefully, and irrevocably beginning to grow.